This episode of Truth Table is brought to you by our NAACP Image Award nominated book, Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation. Get it where all books are sold.
Sisters, how y'all feel? Brothers, y'all all right? If this is your first time at Truth Table, welcome to the table. And if you've been sitting at the table with us all these years, we are so grateful that you have been listening to us through these years, and we are inviting you to partner with us and support our work at patreon.com/truthstable. Now pull up a chair and have a seat at the table with us. Hey y'all, welcome to Truth Table, Midwives and Culture for Grace and Truth. I'm Ekemini.
And I'm Christina.
This table is built by Black women and for Black women. So welcome to the table. See how you doing, girl?
I am doing good. You know, we've been recording, we've been learning, we've been, vibing, and I think
crying and crashing out.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's laughing. To be expected. But today I'm really excited because I'm enlivened to learn, and I feel like we got some learning that's going to happen. Say, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm excited. I look at our new little setup. We're sitting high.
Listen.
We're not looking low because we ain't God, but we're sitting high.
We're feeling low sometimes. There's a lot going on in the world, but but we are reminded to lift up your heads.
Absolutely. And so I think that, as you all know, we have been in our Still Resisting series, and we are so excited and delighted to have a sister who knows what she talk about. Okay, to add to the other sisters that know what they talk about too. Come on. Here at the table to talk about what does democracy look like.
What's it supposed to look like?
It is our sister, Dannelle Walker Whiteside. Let me tell you a little something about Danelle, and then we go start talking. Dannelle Walker Whiteside is a higher education leader, education lawyer, TEDx speaker, authenticity advocate, we need that, and force multiplier. Come on. As vice president for legal affairs and organizational strategy at Austin Peay State University, she serves as the institution's chief legal officer while overseeing strategic initiatives, public relations, and marketing. Her leadership has driven APSU's rebranding efforts, resulting in a 19% increase in applications, strengthened the connection between marketing and admissions to reverse enrollment decline, and launched initiatives like the Leadership Exchange at PEAYple in the Community Day of Service. Previously, as interim president, the first Black president of the nearly 100-year-old institution.
She's a big deal.
She's a big deal. She successfully navigated the university through the COVID-19 pandemic. Launched a $65 million comprehensive campaign and championed conversations on race and social justice. A former general attorney for the U.S. Department of Education and general counsel for the Tennessee State Board of Education, Danelle has shaped policies protecting students' rights and expanding access to quality education. Welcome to the table, Danelle.
With your impressive self.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation. It's so relevant, so needed, so all the things. So I appreciate being here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we are excited to have you here to talk about, what democracy looks like. But I'm curious about your own journey, about the intersection of your Christian faith, being a lawyer, and how education, right? Mm-hmm. How all of those intersections come into your life. How were they made manifest in your own life? As a woman of faith.
Yes. Well, I grew up in church. My dad was minister of music at our church growing up. So I've always been around faith, and at an early age, really learned about how God speaks to you and leaning into the Spirit and listening to the Spirit's voice. So faith has always been very important to me. And then education has always been very important because my dad was a professor. My mom was a dietitian for the local school system. Her mom taught for 45 years. Everyone in my family was involved in education. And so I knew that I wanted to be in that arena, and I wanted to use the gifts and talents that I had to impact education. So then fast forward, I decided to go to law school and really understood how the law plays a role in the type of education that we receive. And I just dove in. And so I've been really blessed to have a career that has been all focused on using my gifts to impact education.
Wow.
And so as we sit in this space of democracy and thinking about the law and the rule of law and how it is supposed to guide us in the ways in which we operate, it really does touch me to look at the shape that we're in right now and just, you know, we can do better.
Yeah, we can do better. We have to do better. We also have to know what better looks like, right? What is it supposed to look like? So I tend to think of myself as pro-democracy. And in my mind, I feel like I got a sense emotionally and cognitively of what I mean by that. But I recognize it's a term that we just kind of throw around. And we do have a civics understanding crisis in America, just like we don't know geography. We also don't know governance very well either. And so if you could just give us an intro, an intro to democracy as it should be, while we recognize that nothing on this side of glory is exactly as it should be, help us to get our handles back on what democracy in America is supposed to look like.
Sure. So if you think about the baseline for democracy, it is that the people elect individuals to represent the people. That's the baseline.
Yes.
So when I go and I vote, I'm saying the person that I vote for, I want them to take my views and use my views to help them to enact laws and things that would affect me. When you bring a group of people together, it is a representative democracy. And so that's how it should look like from the baseline. For our democracy, the way that it's set up, there are 3 branches of government. There's the legislative branch. So you think about your state senators, your federal senators, and things like that. You have, or House of Representatives. Then you have your judicial, which is the Supreme Court. And depending on what state you're in, there are also structures for courts. We have a Supreme Court here in Tennessee, but other places may call it something different. But the highest court. And then you have the executive branch, or the office of the president. And so the way that our structure is supposed to set up, there are checks and balances so that no one particular branch of government has more power than the others. And this is how we're supposed to have that sense of checks and balances and making sure that that it's all working together for fairness, equity. That's a buzzword right now, or a banned word right now, but fairness and principles of justice, all those things are supposed to work in concert to come up with a more perfect union.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Super helpful.
Thank you. What would you say, now that you've showed us or explained to us what a representative democracy has looked like, what it should look like, what would you say are like 3 common misconceptions, about democracy that people, often fall into or have or walk around with regard to democracy?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is my one little vote doesn't matter. That I don't mean anything. And while sure, one individual may not be able to change the outcome of an election, a group of people getting together absolutely can change. And so you cannot say that my one voice doesn't matter, because your one joined with other people is the key. So you have to figure out, where can I put my voice in with the collective to make the biggest impact? I think that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say people don't understand about democracy is they take it for granted that it is here, that it is, we think, well, we're in a democracy. Democracy is so fragile because you have to continuously push toward it. You have to continuously leverage it so that it continues to work. And so I think what we're seeing right now is just this shock about, oh, wow, I thought these systems were always going to be in place. You have to understand that democracy is a fairly new experiment. I mean, America's only been here for a couple of hundreds of years.
That's right.
There are republics, there have been monarchies that have lasted 3 or 4 times longer than this. And so you have to really understand that it takes constant reformation, constant pushing at it to make it work. It's not just always here. Then I think the third thing that we need to understand about democracy is that it can be shaped, it will be shaped by the will of the people. And so that over time, if we continue to work toward it and making it a more perfect union, more shaped, it will constantly evolve to be the best that it can be. So while we might be looking at it right now as very dismal, understand that it doesn't have to be this way if the will of the people shape it in the way that it's supposed to be.
That's good.
No, it's super helpful. And also it's just a reminder, right? So that to not embrace an inevitability of fracture, of dissolution, but rather consistent engagement.
Absolutely.
Consistent engagement.
In either direction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, right. So, but
Right.
what it made me think about is just really how pro-democracy civil rights leaders were, how pro-democracy abolitionists were. And when you think about people whose convictions were, I know that this is not what it should be, but I am going to work to make it that, and just did not quit. So there are many people who would say that they feel like our present moment is an attack on democracy. And but also at the same time, they might feel like, well, what am I supposed to do about that? And also, how do I even engage other people who are like, what are you talking about? That's hyperbolic. It's over the top. I have so much confidence, or things are as they should be. How would you coach them or advise them to be able to handle the pushback to the feeling, the sense that they have that there's an attack on democracy? What would you tell them to say to others who believe that?
Well, I think that the evidence speaks for itself about the attack on democracy. And if we go back to what I was saying about the three branches of government and how no one branch is stronger than the other in this three-legged stool of democracy, when you have a particular branch of government that is deciding that it does not want to obey the rule of law or respect the other two branches, this is the telltale sign that democracy is in jeopardy. So for instance, right now we've seen in President Trump signed several executive orders that are maybe outlawing DEI, or for instance, there was a mass firing of federal employees. And the judiciary just said, well, you didn't follow the rule of law, so you have to reinstate some of these employees. And so that basically says there is a structure, but this particular person decided that we're going to abandon that structure. I'm going to do what I want to do. That tells you that democracy is in jeopardy when you have someone decide that they don't want to respect the rule of law. And so I think when you are having these conversations, and I think in this environment, there are people who just don't want to hear the facts. And so sometimes I'm like, if you have someone who you give facts to and they're like, still, I don't, let's stop that conversation.
I don't like the facts, so that hearing the facts.
But the facts are what they are.
Right.
Okay. And if, you can say, look what we're seeing. Here's the rule of law. Here's someone who says, forget the rule of law. I'm going to do what I want to do. I think that is the telltale sign that democracy is on shaky ground.
Wow. Now, when we think about people of faith, Christians in particular, sometimes there are those who say, who separate their faith, their religious beliefs, from political engagement, who don't maybe see the benefits, of engaging in that, or even maybe feel conflicted about engaging democracy, of exercising their right to vote, right? Because they're like, well, I'm a citizen of the kingdom and God's in control, and, God's will be done. And, all that. So sometimes there's this tendency to disengage, or feel like, I don't need to because, Jesus is my king.
Or kind of a fatalistic view of, depending on their view of eschatology and their end times theology, they might think, well, this is a sign that everything's going to fall apart, so it's just going to fall apart. There's nothing that we can do about that.
And just let it, right? So what would you say to that person about why they should maybe think again about or think differently, about engaging or exercising their democratic, their voice in democracy,
Well, if you look at the Bible, there are all sorts of stories about people of faith engaging in the political structures that were at the time. Jesus himself engaged with the political structures at the time. And so I think that first of all debunks the myth. You know, there are several examples of that.
So many.
Also, Jesus wants us, and he taught us to love people, to take care of the widows and the children, to provide for the poor. And if we care about those things, then we have to be engaged in the systems that impact those people amongst us.
Okay.
So I don't think that we can absolve ourselves and say, well, Jesus has it under control, when he's also given us the power to exert our control to make things happen and to vote for people who support policies that may support poor people or to give families assistance. And so I think that we have to interact in those structures because it's our mandate when God says love everybody, care for the poor, take care of the widows, care about the children, like all of those things God wants us to do, and we have to use every lever that we can pull to make those happen. And so that's why I say we can't sit it out, because we have to to follow what God says, what Jesus says about caring for others.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, I love the visual image of pulling every lever that's available to us in God's world for good, for the purpose of good. We're going to pause here for just a moment, take a short break, and we'll be back learning all about what democracy should be, okay? Because we have to have an image of what it should be so we know what we're working for. So hang on, we'll be right back. Our NAACP Image Award nominated book, Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation, is making waves and shifting culture. I closed this book feeling like I had just partaken in a multi-course meal filled with grace and the courage to carry on. And I believe you'll finish this book feeling the same way. Morgan Harper Nichols, artist and poet. Buy Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation at our website or wherever books are sold. All right, y'all, and we are back, and we are learning about all the things with Dannelle today. Thank you so much for giving us your time. So thank you for helping us to get a clearer vision of what democracy is supposed to be. We're going to keep drilling that down. But, you know, we do know that it is so much more than just voting, although the vote is incredibly important.
Yes, it is.
And we know that it's so much more than just voting in a presidential election. So to the person who's listening right now, who feels helpless, burnt out, frustrated, but wants to engage in democracy for the good of their neighbor, for the sake of love, what are some practical things that you would remind them that they still have the agency and capacity to do as they engage democracy on the local and the federal level?
I think it is to analyze your voice, and your voice can be heard in multiple ways. Voting is the obvious one. Voting, not as you said, not just in federal elections, but local elections. We have judges, district attorneys, mayors, city council. All of those people have actually greater influence on your day-to-day lives than the federal government. So whenever there's an election, I'm always there. So that's the starting point. You also vote by your feet. So where you choose to go, it really impacts. It really says what you believe about something. So, for instance, Target, Target rolled back their diversity, equity, inclusion program, and so there's been a national groundswell saying, "I'm not going to walk into Target anymore and spend my money there." You might say, if there's a church that you go to and all of a sudden you don't hear that they're talking about the moment and they're not, they're acting oblivious as to what's going on in the moment, you can say, I'm not going to go to this church anymore. I'm going to find somewhere that teaches about the moment and how Christians should respond to that. So vote with your feet. You also vote with how you spend your dollars. So I mentioned Target today is the day where we are not spending. So this is another way where you say, I vote with my money. I'm going to keep my money in my pocket until I see, a change coming around here. So just understand that it's not just voting in the booth. There are all sorts of ways that we vote. We can pour into youth, making sure that they understand the times that we're in, but also how they can make their voices heard. We can volunteer places. There are just all sorts of ways that we can say, you know what, I care about my community and I'm going to invest in it regardless of what's happening on the outside. So there are all sorts of ways that we can impact democracy outside of the voting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Super
great.
helpful.
Yeah. Very, very practical, very helpful. Danelle, when you think about your faith and the pro-democracy work, I'm curious about how your faith has informed that pro-democracy work. And are there passages or scriptures or even some biblical narratives that come to mind when you think about the pro-democracy work that you do?
Yes. One of my favorites is the story of Esther and how in the moment she was faced with, should I say something or not? That's right. And Mordecai says, who knows that, you may decide not to say anything, but they're going to be delivered another way. Yeah. And who knows if you were not here for this moment. And so when we have time to think about, did I actually betray myself by not speaking up?
Come on. Yeah.
Did I not press on this democracy in the way that I should? Somebody else might stand up, but then you have to live with the fact that you didn't do a single thing and you actually could have. Yeah. And so when I think about the Bible, that is what resonates with me about how I decide to stand up for something or against something.
Yeah. That's incredibly helpful, right? And in that instance, Esther is reckoning, she's being reminded, you may not stand up and you also may not have your life.
You may not, exactly.
Because you're not going to be exempt from what happens. We are interconnected and interdependent, right? And, and I think about Esther as really as a figure, particularly in Black church tradition for Black women, this example of this reluctant queen. I sure enough wouldn't want to been married to Xerxes if you really read the text, but who wears her own kind of crown of thorns as a kind of a pre-Christ figure, sacrificing herself, not fully, but willing to for the sake of her people, right? And that narrative of kind of this surrogate sacrifice, Black women are real familiar with it, but also real tired about it too, right? And I'm thinking about the 92%. And I'm thinking about all the memes and all the pictures and all the AI art. We're drinking mimosas on the rooftop while everything is burning around us. We're in and I think from a psychologist standpoint, there's so much that I think that is helping us to feel like we have agency in the moment. And yet and still, we are going to have to engage this democracy. Absolutely. So what have you witnessed and what are your thoughts and what is your message to the 92% who we know listen, some of which, particularly those of Christian 92% members who listen to Truth's Table?
The 92%.
What is, see, the buttons. Just to be clear, I try to remind. I'm like, this is not my fault. Okay, there are things I can be blamed for, but this ain't one of them. Okay,
that's right.
And so, but I'm curious, what would you like to say to that group?
I think I would first start by saying I understand. It is tiresome. I come from an activist family. My grandmother and grandfather were known in their community for holding people's feet to the fire. Yeah. And so sometimes it gets infuriating that we are just a few generations removed fighting the same thing. And when do we stop? To be truthful, I've been looking every night about flights to Europe and what's the visa process so I can get out of here. Yes. So I understand. But what is that? There's a saying that when America catches a cold, Black people get pneumonia.
Come on.
For sure.
And so we can say, fine, y'all have it, but we are going to reap the worst of it if we don't push back and stand up. And so rest, be upset, commiserate amongst your girls about how this is the worst time. I don't like it. I'm tired of fighting. But live to see another day, get up, do what you know to do. You might be in meetings where they're talking about dismantling diversity, equity, inclusion at your job. How can you resist that in the best way that you possibly can? Like, we have to re-engage. We cannot give up the fight because that is exactly what they want us to do. And I'm a mom of 3 young Black boys, and I will not. Come on. I refuse to have them inherit a world where they don't have equal opportunity.
Yeah.
If I could have done something to make sure that they did. So I understand the moment. It's tiresome. It's sometimes funny to look at people who voted against their best interest and now they're crying because they lost their job. But also understand that could easily come to your doorstep.
Oh, for sure.
And so we have to get back in the game.
Yeah.
Get back in the game.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm thinking, in this political moment, this very unique, unprecedented time.
Can we get precedented time?
Can we? I would love that.
We are over the
Let's sign up for that. I gotta start praying for that. Like
2020 it's just enough.
Precedented times. So in these unprecedented times, with this assault, on democracy, I'm curious, like, what can or what ought ethical governance look like in 2025? What are the markers, of moral and democratic values? What would that look like to strengthen it, to rebuild it, rebuild it? Like, what does ethical governance, look like, I guess, in 2025 in a healthy democracy?
It's really hard for me to say what ethical governance would look like absent my own faith. Because if you were to put me in a situation, for instance, when I was leading my university, I leaned on God. And I was spirit led. And so that is my definition of ethical governance, is to submit the position that you're in to the Lord and ask him to guide you in the decision making. I don't see that happening, I don't see it happening amongst enough leaders for me.
And it's not even a partisan thing. You're just across the board.
Across the board. But I understand that people in democracy, we respect everyone's faith.
Of course.
And we, so whatever your moral compass is, whatever your ethical leaning is, submit your position to that and allow it to guide you for the benefit of other people.
That's right.
And if you are in it for anything but people and the good of the people, you're in it for the wrong reason. If you are trying to govern because you want to make more money, because you want power and influence only, you're in it for the wrong reason. Right. And so I think that's what ethical government looks like. It means having the will of the people at top of mind for every decision.
That's good.
Well, a true public servant, right?
Exactly.
A true public servant.
Exactly.
As I was listening to Ekemini's question, I was thinking about, as you survey the land of whatever is happening that we are able to discern, because there's always things that are outside of our purview. And is there some area that if you had a magic wand, or if you had the capacity to say, okay, we got to stop that right now, or if there's one intervention that just has to happen, if people could just galvanize around one thing to secure something, is there something that you think of, like, okay, well, when this breaks over here, this is a wrap, or we need to really lean into this one area? I think we need something that helps to focus people. And I think what we're feeling right now is a lot of anxiety because it's so much that's wrong. And they're bombarded in terms of social media and breaking news, and obviously it's more than just one thing. But if this is your show in this moment, okay?
That's right.
If you could pick one thing to say, like, hey, if I could get everybody to get around this topic and to lean in this way, what do you think? What do you think that would be for you?
That's tough, because it feels like there's a lot that needs leaning into.
That's fair.
I think if I could tell people to lean in to one thing, it's community. And I hope that doesn't sound like a cop-out.
No.
But because we are in a moment where it feels very like there's an epidemic of loneliness.
Come on.
This is for sure.
This moment causes people to say, I'm just going to be by myself and disengage.
Yeah.
And at the top of this year, I kind of felt that same thing. And one night, it was my husband's birthday. And so we just had like 2 or 3 couples over for game night. And I left feeling like so full. And so I think that in these times when you're tempted to just disengage, if we can lean into community, because in community is when you realize, oh, you're also feeling like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're feeling like
Mhm.
that. And so if we're all feeling like that, then maybe it's something we can do collectively.
Yes.
And so with that collective voice, then you can lean into the levers and push and resist.
Right.
But because we are kind of all in this moment of feeling like I'm just going to retreat and be by myself, we don't have the strength in numbers that we need to make to make the difference and push against this. So I think that would be the first thing I would lean into.
No, I think that's incredibly important. I think that's part of I think some of the political decisions that have been anti-democracy are rooted in a lack of community and a lack of love for other people. So in a lot of ways, the antidote or the resistance to that starts with committing to seeing other people.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we know that it was absolutely rooted in just individualism.
Yep.
Right. You know, and like you said, not seeing people, not considering the social contract, you know, that we have. I'm curious, you know, as we're thinking about, I said we leaning into community. I'm wondering about, and it might be too big of a question right now, or a hard question right now, but thinking about the assault on democracy, what we're experiencing right now, and the ways that people are, you know, pushing back by boycotting, right, and resist not paying, you know, or supporting businesses that don't support DEI and the like. I'm curious about what you envision, like if you had a magic wand, you know, speak those things that be not, you know, as though they were, you know, like if you could really cast vision, like what would it look like in the future for our democracy to no longer be under attack or assault? What are some ways in which, I don't know, I guess a more perfect union, if you could cast some vision, what would that look like from your own experience, from your own expertise, based on your faith, you know, your Christian faith? Like, if you could paint that picture, what would that look like for us in the future? Because I think we have to, in order to sustain, you know, the resistance and sustain boycotts and things like that, and ensure a stronger, healthier democracy, I think we have to have a vision for what that might look like, or what we're aiming toward. So yeah, could you, you know, cast a little vision for us? What would that look like from your own experience?
And thank you for that question, because our ancestors had that vision.
They did.
They would not have, I mean, if you think about, there are people who lived and died enslaved, but they resisted because at some point they saw the three of us sitting around being able to have free discussions about the things that we care about without fear of persecution and things like that. So it is important to cast that vision. And when I think about a more perfect union, it is my 3 little boys being able to apply for college and get a fair look. It is, you know, them being able to apply for a job and get in the pool without someone saying, well, you know, without them being discounted. It is us being able to have a fair representation that without gerrymandering and without, you know, rigging voting lines so to diminish our voting block. It really looks like you getting what you need because you need it, and you getting what you need because you need it, not because, well, so-and-so gets more and you know, it's to me, when I think about a more perfect union, it is that everyone gets what they need because they need it.
That's right.
I can't think of anything, you know, I can't think of anything else that is more perfect than, you know, if I have $10, but I need another 10, it's okay to give me 10. If you have $20 and you need another 20, it's okay to give you 20 because you need that.
That's right.
And so that's to me is what a more perfect union looks like.
Yeah, and we have it to give, right? So it's
absolutely
abundance. We have more than enough.
We do.
You know, we have
and
more
when you have what
enough.
you need, you can give from a full cup. And it goes around.
That's right.
I don't believe in this sort of deficit model, scarcity model,
Mm-hmm.
where if you give, then all of a sudden now, I can't have it. That's just not how, that's not how God works. If you think about it, he's unlimited in his resources. And just because he gives to you doesn't mean he doesn't have to give to me. Right. And so I think that's what we have to think about when we think about a more perfect union. It's enough to go around. Honestly, there should be no billionaires. Why do you need that much money?
I agree.
And if you have it, you need to be doing what you can do to help other people with it. To me, that is what the bottom line should be. That's to me a more perfect union.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as I listen to that, I'm thinking, and how much more should people have what they need, especially when it's been taken from them?
Absolutely.
When it's been stolen, when it's been denied.
Ill-gotten.
And so I just think that makes the case for reminding us that we are not people of scarcity, that there really is enough.
It's more than enough.
And individually to live that way, but also to use our political power for the good of others, not in a paternalistic way, but for the love of neighbor, to move us closer and closer towards a space where we have that type, and I'm going to use the word equity. We have that type of equity. Well, I am so grateful for having you here today, teaching us all the things. And also, the cool thing about learning, this is the teacher in me, is that learning has the capacity to remind you of the resources that are on the table.
Absolutely.
And when you take stock, even though we know there is indeed an attack on democracy, it does give us a sense of hope that we actually have more than we think that we have to work with. And we got more than we think we have to work with, y'all.
Because we have each other.
Absolutely.
Yes, because we have each other. Because we are each other's magnitude and bond.
Absolutely.
In the words of Lucille Clifton. You know what? Before we go, though, do you want to talk to our audience and tell them anything, the way they can follow your work, anything that you're doing, any final messages that you want to send?
Let's see. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, Dannelle Whiteside. Find me on there. I have a TED Talk that's all about higher education's role in democracy and civil discourse. So it is on YouTube. You can find that. Okay. And, I'm busy raising 3 boys, so I'm not always outside, but I opine where I can.
Yes.
So, that
is great. Wonderful. Well, awesome. Thank you, Dannelle, so much for taking a seat at the table with us for our Still Resisting series. This is what democracy looks like.
Come on now. Let's keep dreaming.
Let's keep dreaming, because we need the dreamers. We need the dreamers more than ever. Thank you so much for taking a seat at the table with us. And of course, to our listeners, thank you for taking a seat at the table with us. Let's keep the conversation going. Talk to us about what democracy looks like. What are the ways in which you're engaging democracy? We want to hear all about it, whether you message us or comment on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of the things. Of course, don't forget to rate and review the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast player, or you can send us your thoughts via email at asktruthstable@gmail.com. All right. Our producers for the show are, our audio producer is Joshua Heath. Our video producer is Daryl Bradford. And we have been your hosts, Ekemini
and Christina, y'all.
We'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.